institutions in the 21st century, being in the media or other, have been developing with time. For the last 100 years, organizations have moved in their structure and hierarchy to meet the requirements of the external business environment or the needs of how the media has developed also in the 100 years passing. Structures are several types, and according to the time since their inception till today, have moved from classical until we come to contemporary approach. One of the most classical models is the known pyramid-shaped organization, and usually this pyramid-shaped can be viewed from 3 dimensions. One dimension, which is the direct forward one that as we see in this diagram, shows the hierarchical or the hierarchy of authority division, where top management will sit on the top, middle management, and lower management in several layers will exist there, like team project leaders, team leaders, supervisors, superintendents, and set managers, etc. One other dimension, which is very important, and depending on the size of the organization, we do a second dimension, which is a cut, longitudinal cuts on this pyramid, and this really represent the specializations or the specialty of the people working in this institution, and they are including, like for example, TV production, radio, if this organization also does that, finance, human resources. We may have, if we have teams that have international coverage, like global media, and operations or engineering. And this, the larger the organization, then this pyramid will increase along this dimension. Now, one dimension that is really not much talked about is a third dimension that is influenced by the technology support to this, and this is this dimension where all the recordings are kept according to the structure, and this is important for IT support, our technology support, where records and films and any other recordings are kept on the bottom, and for sure they are part of it for decision making when we go to the higher rankings. Well, this is called a classical functional model style, or the famous pyramid approach. Now, it has its advantages and disadvantages. Advantages are like, if I look at the outcomes of specific departments, these are known, predictable, while we have a problem of cross-functional collaboration. We do have a problem there, because in reality, this is what is labeled a silo effect, which means people from one department to another cannot just freely talk to each other unless they have the permission of the higher hierarchy. Well, with time, these deficiencies have been developed and introduced with different structures. Now, we will introduce a second approach, which is the hub and spoke approach. And now I erase this one. So the hub and spoke structure is, you can call it a revolutionary approach. Now the thing is, because this is in its simplest form what airliners are used. For example, a hub, it means a main headquarter that keeps very specific functions, while the spokes are really the destinations, and in business or in organizational structures, these represent divisions or other functions. So we may have one headquarter, and this is communicating and keeping control of other items which are given certain decentralized authority. So for example, in this case, we can put TV production here, while on the other side, we can put the radio production. We can have the engineering. Now, usually in the headquarters, you keep the issue of finances, the issue of HR, and other central or centralized functions that cannot be really decentralized. Like, for example, general press releases or so. Now, the importance of this model is you give certain freedom and empowerment to independent functions that we see here, and at some point they have to continuously report to this hub. Now, though it is used by certain global media producers, but still not really a very common structure. Another common structure to that is in reality what we call the matrix approach. Now, since the work in the media, being TV production or radio and reporting and field work, are mostly controlled or mostly developed, we can call them by assignments. So the matrix approach somehow is more used by companies or by media organizations which have many different assignments, either locally or internationally. So therefore, they are resource-based. Instead of keeping resources in each and every function, rather we assign the people, the time, the resources, the technology, the engineering. So therefore, the functional departments are on the top and usually represented by the resources, while on the side usually are the tasks assigned or the projects or the assignments, which could be of different time dimension, different importance, different responsibility. So usually, if there is an assignment to cover certain TV production, so usually this function here, let's say engineering, HR or the personnel, we have the TV production. This is a TV production assignment for sure, not the same. And radio production. And here we have press. Usually what we do is we borrow resources from each and every function, and we form a temporary team who has the responsibility to produce an assignment, and this is the outcome of one assignment, let's say one. This scheme is repeated if I have several crews covering certain news, either in radio or in television, or simply covering let's say an engineering activity. Now, the advantage of this is cross-collaboration among different functions, the centralization of resources, and then distributing it according to an assignment. And such a movement helps us do better efficiency and effectiveness in the time spent, in the amount of budget needed, the type of personnel, and very important at the end is the issue of really how is this managed. Now, the management system for such a structure, which we are calling here the matrix, in reality follows a kind of decision making in management. So usually, the first thing we have to do is to identify the assignment, and we know that the assignments are of different importance, different priorities, and also they may have different amount of capabilities to be used and resources. So therefore, when we define an assignment, it is very important to do a first assessment to the importance of that assignment. The minute we understand how important it is, then when we compare such a result among several projects, we are able to prioritize. And prioritization is very important in order to assign the right resources and not committing resources for activities that are not necessary. So after the prioritization, we do something called formulation, which means the making of the team, the assignment of which technology, what type of camera or what lighting, etc., what type of setups are needed. So the formulation of the assignment itself is well defined, and from there, this is the time where we try to bring the right person to the right assignment. So we delegate the activities to people that will be possibly called either team leaders or project managers. And from there, the communication about the whole assignment is done, and this goes to action. Usually, top management requires at any time reports about this. So for example, depending on the priority, the type of the report is also either simple or more complex or needs certain graphics, etc. And therefore, another important item is beside the report, it has to have an accurate monitoring and an accurate evaluation. And this evaluation could be graphics, could be using photography, could be using even film shots, etc. And therefore, this management process covers from the minute you think about the assignment to the minute it is done, monitored, and evaluated. As we move with time in this 21st century, and with more dynamism in the environment and complexity in the way of covering the news and trying to be the leader and trying to be the first achiever, we understand that organizations should be organic enough to adopt the right hierarchy to reach to the right decisions.